I actually just filmed my previous video because I had filmed it days before and everything was just kind of messed up the sound. I also didn't like the way I looked, so I looked at it as a sign that I needed to re-film that one. And I honestly just went up and decided to put this in my hair, so when I was like going through it on the camera, I knew exactly which one is which. I mean, I probably really didn't need to do that, but I mean, I guess I just kind of wanted to look a little bit different in this video. Thank you so much for joining me on the Quiet Riot, where we talk film, television, and media. I'm Ainsley, and I am so happy to have you. Big welcome to any new followers or new viewers, and welcome back to any returning viewers or listeners. In today's video, we are going to be discussing one of the quintessential film noirs, and that is Out of the Past, which I am calling a film noir blueprint. Film noir can often be difficult for people to pinpoint. There's obviously ones that are completely film noir. There's really no getting past it. Like I said, this is a film noir blueprint. Films like Double Indemnity, 100%, Laura. I don't think there's anybody who would say that's not one. But then you got your film noirs that some people will refer to as a film noir, others won't, such as the film starring Gene Tierney, Leave Her to Heaven, which does have a lot of very film noir elements. And for me, I would definitely say it's got some film noir elements. Out of the Past, however, is 100% a film noir. I will be talking a little bit more about that in the future. I want to do a video strictly on film noir, so let me know in the comments below if you are interested in that. But today we are just sticking to one, and that is talking about Out of the Past, starring the one and only Robert Mitchum. Over the course of his career, Robert Mitchum starred in many film noirs. His tough exterior and deep voice made him the perfect lead of any crime film. As a private investigator or cold-blooded criminal, Mitchum was perfect in the role. Film critic Roger Ebert said of Mitchum, "With his deep Leonic voice and his long face and those famous weary eyes, he was the kind of guy you'd picture in a saloon at closing time, waiting for someone to walk in through the door and break his heart." In Out of the Past, Mitchum plays a former PI turned small-town gas station attendant who gets pulled back into his past when a former associate finds him. Adapted by Daniel Manwaring, using his pseudonym Jeffrey Holmes, from his novel Build My Gallows High, Out of the Past also stars Jane Greer as one of the most fatal femme fatales. With a complex story featuring dark cinematography, voiceover, flashbacks, and more, Out of the Past is the perfect film noir blueprint. Produced by RKO Pictures, Out of the Past featured cast and crew that were longtime key players for RKO. Directed by Jacques Tourneur, with cinematography from Nicholas Misaraka, the film was given a lavish budget compared to other films produced by RKO and other film noirs. Produced by Warren B. Duff, Out of the Past was edited by Samuel E. Beatley and had music by Roy Webb. I actually can't find the budget for Out of the Past, but I do know that it made a profit of $90,000. Considered one of the best film noirs ever made, Out of the Past was loved by both critics and audience upon its release. Over time, the film has maintained its place as one of the most loved of the noir style and crime genre. Roger Ebert, who considered Robert Mitchum among his favorite actors, wrote of the film, "Out of the Past is one of the greatest of all film noirs. The story of a man who tries to break with his past and his weakness and start over again in a town with a new job and a new girl." The film stars Robert Mitchum, whose weary eyes and laconic voice, whose very presence as a violent man wrapped in indifference, made him an archetypical noir actor. The story opens before we've even seen him. A trouble comes to town looking for him. A man from his past has seen him pumping gas, and now his old life reaches out and pulls him back. The trick, as demonstrated by Jacques Tourneur and his cameraman Nicholas Misaraka, is to throw a lot of light into the empty space where the characters are going to exhale. When they do, they produce great white clouds of smoke, which express their moods, their personalities, and their energy levels. There are guns in Out of the Past, but the real hostility comes from Robert Mitchum and Kirk Douglass smoked at each other. In an interview with Roger Ebert, Mitchum said that he smoked so much that when the camera was rolling and Kirk Douglass offered him a pack and asked, "Cigarette?" Mitchum realized he carried a cigarette into the scene, held up his fingers, and replied, "Smoking." His improvisation saved the take, and they kept it in the movie. I watched this for the first time recently. I don't think it's actually available on Max anymore, but it was last month. I was, of course. But if you do have a chance to watch it, I will put in the description box below where you can purchase it, rent it, watch it digitally. I do believe it is available on Sling if you have Sling. So, highly recommend. But this specific scene, I remember coming across it, and I knew that it had to be like an improvisation because it just seems like one of those things where it definitely works for these characters and the relationship they have with each other, but it just had that very like happy accident feeling, which in my opinion, the best improv that occurs in films are very happy accident. Shot in and around Lake Tahoe, Out of the Past stars Mitchum alongside Jane Greer and Kirk Douglass in an early role. Greer plays Kathy Moffat, who plays both men to get ahead. A journey full of twists and turns, Out of the Past is sure to entertain the most prolific and the more casual of film noir viewers. Out of the Past was liked by those that often dismissed film noir, and film noir is very much like horror. You have certain films that people put on a pedestal, you have The Exorcist and such, and Silence of the Lambs is one of those, and then the majority of the genre and subgenres within it are really, just treated like absolute drivel, and that's very much how film noir was treated. It usually or typically will fit in kind of the crime detective drama. At the time that these were made, they were melodramas, which I wouldn't consider that because a lot of them had a lot of wit to them as well. They had a lot of funny moments. There were some that were definitely dry. There were a lot of film noirs made from 1940 to 1955. A lot of them maintained a lot of levity, and Out of the Past does that as well. Out of the Past had a big budget, and for the most part, it looked a lot cleaner than some of your typical film noirs. But you know what? Not every film can be Out of the Past, The Maltese Falcon, Double Indemnity, Sunset Boulevard. You have your really low budget ones that just kind of, scratch that film noir itch. Out of the Past scratches a lot of film noir itch for a lot of people, even those that aren't really typically fans of film noir. The film's intense storyline left audiences on the edge of their seat. As Mitchum's Jeff Bailey was thrown back into the past, audiences hoped for the character's happy ending. At least I did. Would Kathy Moffat allow that to happen? Jane Greer and Mitchum got acquainted fast when their first scene was a romantic one. They had never worked together before, but their chemistry was off the charts the moment Turner yelled action. Some people are of the opinion that noir doesn't have a lot of layers beyond the twists and turns that it offers. While there are a long list of film noirs made during the style's heyday, between 1940 and 55, and yes, some of them were so formulaic that they were straight predictable, there are still a large number of noirs that offer great stories and incredible style. Out of the Past is one such film. Styled beautifully by Turner, the director is joined by a cameraman that complements him well. Musaraka is best known for his work with RKO, working on many of Val Lewton's horror films. He had previously worked with Turner on Cat People. He is a master of the camera and the film noir style. Looking at his work in Out of the Past and how he works with the smoke-filled rooms, Musaraka makes me believe that he is the only cinematographer that could film Out of the Past. Jacques Turner, previous work with RKO, allowed him to expand his use of shadow, and his resume suited him for the role as director of Out of the Past. Low-budget horror and film noir becomes something extra special with Turner behind the camera. Jane Greer remembers a conversation with the director. "Jane, do you know what Paul Yves mean?" The director asked the actress. Impassive? Yes? No, big eyes. No, expressive. In the beginning, you act like a nice girl, but then, after you kill the man you meet in the little house, you become a bad girl. Yes? First half, good girl, second half, bad. I get you, she said. That was his direction, Greer recalled. But I did throw in a few big eyes anyway. I couldn't help myself. Turner also discussed with her his plan for the character's wardrobe, something typical of his films. Subtle, insidious visual design. At first, you wear light colors. After you kill the man, darker colors. In the end, black. Turner had a strong vision, and he excelled at creating atmosphere as seen in Out of the Past and other films he directed for RKO. Looking at this film, it is easy to surmise that big budget or small, Turner could make it happen, and he did it well. Of course, he was not alone in making all those low-budget films look great on a shoestring budget, but he was still making the film come alive. He also worked well under the restrictions of the Hays Code. Even if they couldn't show you everything, Turner knew how to allude to every moment he couldn't catch on film. The character of Kathy Moffat, as played by Jane Greer, one of the most lethal femme fatales, appeared innocent enough at first. As time goes on, the cracks began to show, but her manipulations of the situations continue. While Greer does have the perfect femme fatale look, she could as easily portray an innocent young woman caught in the crossfire. While the two men in her life see each other as rivals, they share one true enemy, and that is Kathy Moffat. I'm a big fan of TCM, so of course I went to YouTube to see if I could find some little snippets and interviews of them talking about Out of the Past, and I was definitely lucky because I was able to see that in Noir Alley, in which the host, Evan Mueller, is joined by Chris Mitchum, who is the son of Robert Mitchum. He mentions there that his father said that learning to act is like trying to learn to be taller. And I really feel that from Mitchum. Mitchum was somebody who could really he could deliver lines that other people I don't think could really deliver very well without them without them sounding super cheesy or weird or just not a good line. And the way that he was able to really just move through a scene, and in his own way, he moves quite elegantly. No wonder he was in a lot of films like this, or he was in, Westerns. He had that certain kind of elegant bravado that I don't think that, even some other popular stars, like the guy that, John Wayne, John Wayne? I don't watch a lot of John Wayne, so that went right over my head. But certain ones like that just didn't have that same. There is a certain way that Robert Mitchum walked through a scene. It is this very specific masculine energy. And in the clip, Chris Mitchum was talking about his father and his father's experience. And Robert Mitchum actually had left home when he was 14, and I believe he had kind of left home even before that at 12 years old. He would kind of find money and send it to his mom and do like little odd jobs, I think. And his parents, he lived in poverty even before that, but then he ended up, just moving around the United States with a lot of older men who were also houseless. And you really got to be tough in that. So he had this very natural toughness in which certain actors really appeared, at least to me, as if they're trying to be tough and act tough, where it comes very effortlessly to Mitchum. Apparently, when Robert Mitchum's career began, critics weren't always fond of his acting. It didn't take long for that to change, as he became a legend in his own right. He definitely wasn't very typical in either his looks or in the way that he carried himself and his acting style. More so at the time, there was this very specific way of doing things, which things go in and out of popularity all of the time, but I do think, just Mitchum in many ways stands alone, particularly in that era, and it truly worked to his advantage, and he really found his stride in the movies that he was making. In this movie, Mitchum was actually 29 years old, Kirk Douglass was 26, and Jane Greer was 22. But all of them bring something to this film in which they all seem like they have lived a lot longer of a life. Now, I know there's been a lot of talk about how back in the day, people tend to look a lot older, and in certain circumstances that is 100% true. And there's also a lot of other things that really play into that, such as hairstyles and just different kinds of, styling and makeup. But I also think that a big part of that is looking back to the 1940s. It was a very different time, and the lives people were living were quite different. I think if I were to probably see Jane Greer in more like modern clothing and style, she would appear a lot younger. But Greer is 100% one of the most beautiful women I think I've ever seen in my life, and she's absolutely beautiful in this role, and Mitchum is very handsome. This was actually breakthrough roles for all of them. They had worked prior to this, but this was one where their names really blew up, and after this they would go to make more and more bigger roles. Chris Mitchum was asked really about this rivalry that was alleged to have occurred between Douglass and Mitchum, and Chris Mitchum actually refers to Kirk Douglass as an ass, as allegedly that's what his father had told him, and he would essentially tell the crew what to do and tell other people what to do. And apparently Robert Mitchum was very much treating other people like, all like the cast and crew as equals. And a man that, pretty much spent a great deal of his life and a big part of his youth houseless and really taking on roles that he shouldn't have to, and being in trouble like that and living a life like that. To hear that he was the man that he was, especially on set, is not a surprise. And it's always good to hear when people really go through stuff like that and they turn out to really treat other people with the utmost respect. Is always good to hear. I don't know, I just a thought. I think that's one of those things that, like, you see Robert Mitchum as this very, really tough guy, and when you kind of hear these really sad things, it just, it further like humanizes, and you see a lot more of that depth in him. The role of Jeff Bailey, as played by Robert Mitchum, was originally offered to actors Humphrey Bogart, Dick Powell, and John Garfield, and they all turned it down for one reason or another. And again, that's just one of those things where it just really is meant to be that Robert Mitchum would take on this role. Regardless of the relationship between Mitchum and Douglass, they did have an incredible chemistry in this film, and they worked really well together. And honestly, that difference of personality there honestly worked very well for these characters. I think that really came through on screen, where they just were very different, and their individual pieces, or individual personalities really played into these characters and their relationship with each other. I then watched The Essentials, where Ben Mankiewicz and Brad Bird had done an intro and outro to Out of the Past. And in the outro, writer-director Brad Bird mentions that it seems as if the editing process for this film went more on the feeling than the logic. And I would 100% agree with that, and I believe that in the interview with Chris Mitchum, he had said that his father had mentioned it, like, reading the script, and it feels like, there was like a scene or like a handful of pages that just went missing. And in reality, I mean, in some movies you can say that that's just absolutely disastrous, but I do think it works to the advantage of a film like Out of the Past and some other very, film noir films. It is a very specific style and way of presenting a film noir. Out of the Past, in many ways, if it was written differently and done differently, it wouldn't be a film noir. But this film, it also just seems like it's one of those that couldn't be anything else but a film noir, and it would have just been a complete shit show had the film not been a film noir. There is a long list of films that could easily be presented to you as the best or best of film noirs of all time. I have a list myself, and they're a must watch it. I will, if you want to make a video in the past, I might do some shorts as well where I share some of my personal favorites. But here, I will just say that Out of the Past is a must watch for film noir fans, crime and detective story fans, and anybody who just wants to get into old movies or film noir Out of the Past is a quintessential film noir. It is a blueprint that will tell you everything you need to know about the style of filmmaking, as well as some of the story elements that go into making a film noir. There are many films that came before it and films that came after that can also be considered one of the best of all time. And Out of the Past is also very deserving of that title. If you are interested in film noir, detective stories, crime, I highly recommend checking this movie out. If you're interested in really getting into older movies, film noir, black and white, any and all of the above, Out of the Past is a necessary watch at some point in your journey. I highly recommend it, and I recommend checking out more film noir featuring the incredible Robert Mitchum, and more films by Jacques Turner, and films with the cinematography of Nicholas Musroka. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch and or listen to this video. I would always love to know your thoughts in the comments below. Not only do I love to hear them, but it also helps with the algorithm. Like, subscribe, or ring that bell to be notified every single time I post. And if you have any requests, things that you have any ideas, if you have any requests, recommendations, please let me know in the comments, and feel free to start a conversation on Out of the Past or film noir in general, any of the filmmakers, actors, or anything you can think of. I'll see you next time, and have a good day. Bye!